Hello and welcome back to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 33B.
I'm Cam and this is Julie.
Yes, this is the B'rit Hadashah or the New Testament discussion on this week's Torah portion. And this week's discussion is found in Mark. It's Mark 4:35 and then on through all of chapter 5. And we're picking up where we left off last week. So last week we see Yeshua talking about the parables, the 7 parables of Matthew 13. Mm-hmm. This week it says, this is how it starts in verse 35. And on the same day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us pass over to the other side. So this was later on that evening after he explained the more intimate parables to his disciples. They get on a boat. Mm-hmm. Now, 37, and there came a great windstorm, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already being filled. So here we see a huge storm coming up. The boat, if you can imagine, it's being tossed all around. If you've ever been to the Sea of Galilee, there's mountains all the way around, so the wind can pick up very quickly. Yes. The storms can come on you out of nowhere because you can't see them beyond the mountains, and it kind of acts like a funnel. You know, comes in and it just whips you around. And so I thought, wow, what a physical example the disciples have. So I started thinking of other verses that we see this. Mm-hmm. So the first one I thought of was Ephesians 4:14. It says, so that we should no longer be children tossed and borne about by every wind of teaching, by the trickery of men and cleverness onto the craftiness of leading astray. In Ephesians 4, you have the bringing together the one new man. That's the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. That's what Yeshua did when he died and resurrected, right? Bringing that back together. Then we see now you've had all this doctrine. And that's what doctrine does, right? In James 1:6. And all this
oral law.
Yes.
Which is why he also says, oh, well, come to me, for my burden is light, my yoke is easy.
Right. And in Ephesians 4, he's talking to the Gentiles. Mm-hmm. So he's saying, you know, you've had all these weird doctrines that take you this way and this way. You don't want to be like Israel, who took their idea of worship out into the wilderness and built the golden calf that we'll see next week.
I believe it is.
Is it next week? Okay. It's we don't want to be like that. We don't want to bring our old pagan ways into God's ways.
Right.
He has set ways. He says in Deuteronomy, and he says in Deuteronomy not to do that.
Right.
Well, here you have the disciples. They've been living up in the Galilee amongst the northern kingdom. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of false doctrine.
Right.
Right. So here is their physical example, because where's Yeshua? He's asleep.
Yeah, in the belly.
In the belly, right. He's in there, but they're not utilizing him. They're not bringing him forth and actually if you think of the storm being doctrines, they're not using his doctrine to combat that. They're just going with it and then saying, we're going to die, we're going to perish. And so he stands up, he quiets the storm. And so let's think about that. That's in a big picture. Uh-huh. So now let's think about that in a personal level.
Okay.
Those of us who are going back to Torah and who are seeking that truth, this is exactly where we were when we came out. Yeah. We're being tossed this way.
What shrine? I don't know what shrine.
I mean, chasing the prophets, chasing the miracles, or chasing the doctrines. What's the new doctrine coming out?
High.
Or the spiritual high, all of those different things. We're chasing those things, and it's tossing us all around. We just feel beat up all the time. And then what do? We blame it on the enemy. We're like, the enemy's killing me, Yeah. Because Yeshua tells them, gosh, he says, what are you so afraid? Have you not yet belief? Which belief is faith.
Right.
Faith is being walking out. Right. And he was our perfect example. And when he stood up, the storm went quiet. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happens with us. We have all this doctrine tossing us all over the place. Right. But when he comes in and shows us truth, it quiets all that.
Boy, it does.
And we don't even, I don't even think think about those anymore.
Me either.
Because they don't make any sense.
Right. I mean, that's just it. You're like,
it doesn't even make sense.
Why did I think that was right?
Right.
One, because you didn't have a scriptural background.
Right.
That's usually why we fall for it.
And usually it's because someone who we have put up on a pedestal says it's right.
Yeah, we didn't go check it.
And that's usually why. And we didn't check for ourselves. And that's why. So then he quiets the storm and they go on to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And here we have the encounter with the demoniac. moving on to 5, we see Yeshua and his disciples encounter the demoniac amongst the graves. So,
and they're on the Gentile side now.
Yes, they are on the Gentile side. They get out of their boat, and the demoniac, it struck me. He could have hid, but instead what was inside him just kind of went crazy and forced him. He ran down the hill, and Luke says, when it describes him, that he had no garment. So going on your teaching, I thought that's really interesting because he's Gentile. So he didn't even have a garment to start with that could have gotten dirty or kept clean.
Yeah.
He has no garment. He's completely naked. So what's inside him goes crazy and forces him to bow down before Yeshua, which made me think of every knee will bow eventually.
And that's in
and every
Philippians.
tongue will confess that he is Lord. And what does he do? He said, what do I have with you, Yeshua of Nazareth, his physical, son of Elohim, which is his spiritual being. And
he sees both.
Right. That's exactly right. Same exact thing. So he says, what do I have with you? And, Mark gives us a clue that this demon did not come out of him like the other ones did, immediately. Yeshua rebuked it and they would immediately come out when he was amongst the Jews or amongst Israel. But now he's in the Gentile territory and they weren't leaving. In fact, they were like, what are you doing here? It's not my time.
Yeah.
It is not my time.
You are out of your territory.
That's right. Which then made me think, wow, they really have a sense of the spiritual things in him. Yeah. Had a sense of when their judgment was to come. Right. And they knew that it was not time for that judgment. Which makes me think, wow, he gives us so many clues in here. If we'll just follow the clues, we won't be left in the dark either because he'll share it with us.
And it says that in Thessalonians.
That's
it
right.
says that we are children of the day, not the night. It will
not
take us
Right. It
by
should
surprise.
not be taking us like a thief in the night. Right. We're like, oh, it's going to come like a thief in the night.
Not
but
to
according
me.
to Revelation 3, when he says it'll come like a thief in the night, that's not a good thing. It's because they didn't get it right.
Well, that's
they
what
had
it says in
partly
Thessalonians too.
a truth.
It'll come as a thief, but not to you.
Right. So Yeshua asks what his name is, and he says, Legion, for we are many. Now, they ask, would you please not drive us to the bottomless pit? Right. So basically, they're like, "Fine, we're going to come out of this man. We're going to obey.
To leave.
We're obeying, but would you please refrain from judging us? Can we go inside these pigs?" And he said, "That's fine." So they went inside the pigs. We know the story. The pigs went crazy and they basically committed suicide. But here's the thing: pigs were used to sacrifice to pagan gods,
especially in that area. That's what they were there for.
That's what they were there for. So
Zeus, they were the number one.
That's right.
Sacrifice.
That's what
for Zeus.
Antiochus Epiphanes did. That's the Hanukkah story is about. Right. He took a pig and slaughtered it on December 25th. That's Zeus's birthday. He took the pig into the Holy of Holies and slaughtered it to Zeus. Or he erected a statue. Yeah, so that's what he did. He erected the statue and slaughtered it on the altar. And that in itself speaks volumes. But anyway, so the demons went out. This man is in his right mind again. He's clothed. He's sitting there. All the people started coming out and seeing what happened, and they're mad. Yeah, they're mad.
Not the reaction you would expect.
No, they didn't even notice. Well, they did notice the man. They didn't care because why? Because Yeshua dispelled their false doctrine. Right. And when our sacred cows get stepped on. Yes, our sacred pigs in this example. Our sacred pigs get stepped on is when we don't want it anymore. Right. And I thought that was very interesting because how much pagan worship do we bring into it? And then when we hear the truth, we're just, gosh, got to count the cost. Like I just don't want to give that up. So the disciples leave. They get back into the boat with Yeshua. They go back to their hometown, and there are crowds waiting for him again.
They're like, he's got to come home.
Yes. And I mean, the whole trip to the other side was to escape the crowds. Now here he is going back home. What?
I just thought, you know how people wait in line for a movie, like they'll camp out?
Yes.
Like, are they waiting in line for the movie? He's got to come back.
Yes.
I'll just pitch my tent right here waiting.
It is. And so let's think about that on a bigger picture.
Okay.
Yeshua was with the Jews when he came, and now he's with the Gentiles.
Yeah.
Now he's calming the
said, "Please
storm.
leave."
He's calming the he calms the storm to his disciples. That's us.
Yes.
Judgment starts in the house of the Lord. So he's calming our storm. He's showing us the right doctrine. He's going to the Gentiles in an evangelistic sort of way, saying, look, these things are not correct. We need to get these right. Some of them want it, some of them don't. And now he's going back to his people. Yes. He's going back to the Jews. This is futuristic. This is what hasn't been seen. And I love the next two stories because it really testifies to this. You have a man waiting there that says, come save my daughter. She's 12 years old. 12 representing the 12 tribes. Right. You know, she's 12 years old, but she's dying. And on his way there, she actually does die. And on his way there, you've got the woman who has the issue with blood. Now let's talk about that a second, because the issue with blood caused so much heartache. For one, she can't be intimate with a man according to Torah.
Right.
Because she never stopped bleeding.
Right.
And according to Torah, you cannot be intimate with your husband or, you know. She couldn't partake of the Passover lamb. She couldn't go to the temple. She couldn't do so many things because of the issue of blood. This was a huge issue for her. So out of love for the Lord, she couldn't perform those mitzvahs.
Right.
She couldn't do it. So she takes hold of his tzitzit, which represents his authority. She takes hold of that and the healing. She's healed. He knows it. He felt the healing go out of her. And
he even says, who touched me? I felt it go out.
That's right.
I felt my energy.
That's right.
The healing.
The healing go out. And it says she had this issue for 12 years. Again, representing Israel as a whole, not as the divided kingdom, but as a whole.
Right.
He restored that first because blood represents our sinful nature.
Right.
So he restores the sinful nature first, then he resurrects the 12-year-old girl from the dead.
But she's about 12 and 12, so they could have, literally, they probably, when hers started, the little girl was born.
Yes.
I mean, that would be so like the Lord. He's so precise.
I know, exactly. So isn't that, again, representing what is about to happen and what is happening right now in Israel? They're understanding their issue of blood, the issue that we need the Messiah. We need someone to atone for our sins. And they're being healed of that. They're recognizing Yeshua more and more. And the next step will be to resurrect that younger generation.
Right.
You know.
And why is 12 significant?
Because there's 12 tribes.
Yeah.
There's 12...
well, there's 12. That's why you know.
On the breastplate.
That's why you know it's like Julie was saying, the whole of Israel. That's why 12 is showing it's the whole of Israel.
Right.
That 12 is that's kind of a key that says this is important.
Right.
You know.
And that's what Yeshua did his first time, spiritually bringing that back to one new man.
Yeah.
We can now be the promise of that by walking it out.
Right.
And he is eventually physically going to come and heal them, heal their land, and resurrect that. And resurrect meaning spiritually bring back.
Well, these
that
dry
generation
bones.
Right now, the dry bones that's there, living, not understanding Yeshua is the Messiah, because we are not strengthening them in the way they need to go. So our job, be in prayer, perform those mitzvahs. Right. That is what is going to strengthen Israel, and they're going to see the Messiah for who he is and be resurrected spiritually.
And that makes me think of Jacob in Genesis. I think it's 45, around there, 46, where when he sees Jacob, remember before he's basically dry bones.
Right.
And then when he sees him, when
he sees Joseph.
when he sees Joseph, when Jacob sees Joseph, right. Jay's giving.
Yes.
His life returns.
Right.
Same idea. That's what Israel will do.
When Israel, and they're coming into the faith right now and understanding. They're like the woman taking hold of his authority, and they're being healed. And he's on his way to resurrect that spiritually. You know, Ezekiel 35. Yeah. Yeah, those dry bones. Yeah. And that's it. That's where we end.
Stuff.
Yes. So I saw the entire picture in this one lesson. Yeah. You know, play by play by play.
I was saying, because it literally shows the place, and it shows those who are separated, how he's inviting them in, but not all in one. They're like, go away. Right. Some did and some didn't.
So on a personal level, that's exactly as a body where we're at.
Yeah.
He is slaughtering all of those sacred cows and telling us, get rid of those, get rid of those. And we have the choice. Do we want to be like the demoniac man who said, please, can I go with you?
Right.
Or do we want to be like the others who only saw their prophet being drowned, being
get out of here.
Yes, and then please leave, because that was their God.
Right.
They didn't want the true living God, and we need to ask ourselves the same thing.
Yeah, what do we want?
When we're faced with those things, because to be truly set apart, I promise it's not easy. It's not easy. You will look different. You will act different. You will have different celebrations than everyone else. You will have, but talk about fulfilling. I've never experienced something more fulfilling than the truth.
Amen.
Yes. And that's it. That's all I have. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. Please join us next week for episode 34. Yeah, moving up. Maybe we'll get to the golden calf in the Torah.
Yeah. I know. I guarantee that at some point we will.
And that's so funny, because on the heels of this one, going into learning about what the golden calf really represents is going to be very exciting. So stay tuned next week. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a fantastic week. Shalom.